Hello everyone, welcome to the United Stand. I hope you're doing well this Saturday morning, and we've got a big announcement coming in from our Chief Executive, Ed Woodward. So it's not paper talk, it's real talk from the manager, not the manager, from Ed Woodward's mouth, the Chief Executive. The man who is rumoured to run Manchester United has been speaking to a Manchester United fans forum last night. Late last night we got the quotes coming out, and effectively it does put a question mark over primarily the Jadon Sancho transfer, because when he's saying things like the market's going to be challenging, I don't think people appreciate that, and there will be limitations on these big transfers. What does that mean for Jadon Sancho? Now, look, I can read you some of the quotes. They're basically from Ed Woodward's mouth, saying nobody should be under any illusion of the sort of challenge or the scale of challenges clubs face this summer. You cannot help but feel that speculation around transfers of individual players for hundreds of millions of pounds ignores the reality of the sport faces, and that's the line for me. Cannot help but feel the speculation around transfers of individual players for hundreds of millions of pounds ignores the reality the sport faces. So basically saying that, you know, I can't help but feel that buying players for hundreds of millions of pounds is not the reality that we now live in. Well, who's going to cost hundreds of millions of pounds? Jadon Sancho. So what does that mean for Manchester United? What does that mean for Jadon Sancho? And is this what I was sort of hinting at last night? Is this... And I didn't, you know, this meeting had already taken place. I'd had a leak about it, but I didn't really think we were going to get that sort of a line from Ed Woodward. And I was talking last night about this, how if you look at United's spend over the last 60 million, over the last 3 or 4 transfer windows, we've never spent more than 60 million net. Now, January, obviously, Bruno was 50. The summer before, it was 60 million net when you took off Lukaku's fee from the likes of Harry Maguire and Wan-Bissaka. We didn't spend anything in the January before that. Mourinho's last summer, it was 60 million net. So where was this money going to come from for Jadon Sancho anyway? United were going to have to change tract, really, and start spending in excess of £60 million net spend. And then you start to think, well, why would they do that at a time when they're clearly losing money? Because we are losing money. So looking around social media, and it's interesting to see what you all have to say on this, because looking around social media, you've got people talking about boycotting. You've got people trending Glazers out. You've got people, very angry about this and saying, you know, if we don't sign any players this summer, it's a bloody disgrace. I'm going to take a different angle on this and say, what if this is a message to everybody trying to bend us over and, you know, basically get a big fee out of us, out of our back pocket? That we're not going to have that happen. Look, we've got money, but we're not going to pay silly prices in a market that has collapsed and crashed. And that's the reality. You know, you look at what Norwich City are saying this morning. They furloughed their staff. They said we're a very well-run business, but we haven't got infinite amounts of money, and we're going to have to take cuts. And lots of clubs are going to have to take cuts. So why should Manchester United not take cuts in relation to transfer fees? And I think it might be a mess. I mean, I've got to also say hello and welcome to the Manchester United division of football fans club, because this is what happens. Whether it's Pogba, Solskjaer, Woodward, the Glazers, the United fans, you know, there's a lot that United have done really well over the last few weeks. They've put money into food banks. They're shouting out the NHS on Old Trafford, the signing of Bruno Fernandes, the form on the pitch before the lockdown. There's a lot of good that United have done. I don't think they're going to pop that balloon by saying we're not spending any money, we're not signing Jadon Sancho. I just think it's an interpretation of the things that Ed Woodward has said that you could go, oh, bloody hell, oh, what a surprise. They do a few nice things around charity and then they're not going to spend any bloody money because they're just going to sit on their pile of gold and do nothing. And I think there is a reason to say that. The evidence suggests that that is the Glazers' tactic. But are we not on a different path at Manchester United now? And is this not a massive opportunity for Manchester United now? Ed Woodward also said the commercial model that we've had over the last few years gives us greater resilience in the market. I don't think he's closing the doors to transfers. I think that there is a possibility. I'm not going to say definitely not closing the doors to transfers, because you know what? If the Glazers ever wanted an excuse not to spend money, and when do they never need an excuse? They've got the biggest excuse the world's ever known in the last 50 years. So they've got an excuse not to spend money. But from a football point of view, what an opportunity this is. we need to close the gap on Liverpool, Man City, but we also need to close the gap on Leicester, on Chelsea. What an opportunity this is. We need to elongate the gap on Arsenal and Spurs. This is a massive opportunity for United if it goes our way, because we know our commercial or the football club is in a stronger position than most. We're not furloughing staff. We're not asking players to take a pay cut. We're in a stronger position. We don't have infinite funds, but we have an opportunity in this market to spend money and bring in more players than we thought for a more reasonable price and almost bypass 2 years, because our 2-year transfer plan could be done in one summer if we do it correctly. And I think what Woodward's doing here, and I hope what he's doing here, is trying to compress the market, saying, you know what, these talks of £150 million for Kane or 100 million for Pogba or 100 million for Sancho totally and utterly ignores the reality, the situation the market is in. And I choose to take a positive spin on it in a hopeful way. To be fair, though, what Woodward said shouldn't come as a surprise. Mark, you've been saying something like this for weeks, says Russell Burton. Well, look, Woodward will be driven by the Glazers. There is no doubt about that. And we may well not spend anything, but I think we've got to look beyond that. Josh Bowater, we get taken advantage of by having to pay inflated fees during normal times, so why not take advantage of the deflated market while we can? And that, to me, Josh, is exactly the thing I'm trying to say here. We must take advantage of this opportunities in front of us, because if United were looking at this summer and going, we're probably going to lose Pogba, we'll get Jadon Sancho, we'll keep Ighalo, and we'll get Jack Grealish. Well, suddenly there is an opportunity to keep Paul Pogba because no one can afford him, get Jadon Sancho for a cheaper price, and also look at that centre defensive midfielder as well, because you don't necessarily need Grealish if you keep Pogba, but you could get your centre defensive midfielder that you were maybe thinking about next summer. You maybe get your centre back that you were thinking about next summer. There are opportunities in there. But look, does what Ed Woodward say mean that we're not going to get Jadon Sancho? For those who are joining us a little bit late, let me just read some of the things Ed Woodward has said. Nobody should be under illusions of the scale of the challenges clubs face this summer because of what's happened. And I cannot help feeling that speculation around transfers of individual players for hundreds of millions of pounds ignores the reality the sport faces. And that basically means that don't expect massive transfer fees this summer, because it totally and utterly ignores the reality of the situation out there. But we're massively linked to Jadon Sancho. We've been linked to Jadon Sancho by tier 1 journalists, Fabrizio Romano, David Ornstein, others as well. We have been heavily linked to Jadon Sancho, and I've been told United want Jadon Sancho. But the horrible thing about this is it might come down to money. United might have to say, we can't give you £100 million for Jadon Sancho in this market. Should they do it? I actually think over the coming years it'll be worth it. You're getting a teenager who in 5 years' time, with the trajectory he's on, is going to be worth hundreds of millions of pounds. So I think it's worth doing, but I don't know, hand on heart, I don't know which way it's going to go. But I do think that, and I said this last night as well, it probably could be Sancho and nothing. If Pogba stays, Sancho and nothing is probably going to be Manchester United's summer window. And I do very rarely come down on the side of Woodward and the Glazers, but if they're playing this right, it's the right way to play it. If they're basically putting a message out there that we're not going to spend ridiculous money on players, but we are looking to spend, that's fine. If we're putting a message out there saying we're not spending anything and this is the perfect opportunity for us to keep hold of our money, that's not fine. And we'll find out. And people will go one way and people will go the other, and some people will sit on the fence. But it was always going to happen. But let's not forget, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, probably 4 weeks ago now, I can't remember how many weeks ago it was, he said we've got our targets and that's not going to change because of this situation. So where's the truth? Is it somewhere in between? Is Ole not getting the truth? Is the truth now changed a few weeks later? Though that can happen. A year ago we had Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. You'd be surprised at the quality of player that wants to come to this club. We weren't really surprised. I wasn't surprised that Maguire wanted to come. I wasn't surprised that Wan-Bissaka wanted to come. When he said that, I was thinking, wow, we're talking proper talent here. So Ole doesn't always get it right. Woodward doesn't always get it right. Do I think we'll sign Jadon Sancho? As I said yesterday, I'm 60%. I'm 60%, which some people would say quite low, but I think a 50-50 chance in a transfer is reasonable. And Yeah, but, you know, when you've got Woodward saying, you know, rules out Sancho transfer potentially, he potentially is ruling it out on the basis that we know Dortmund want a 9-figure fee. They want £100 million or more. And it might not be possible or viable for a club to do that. It's going to be a very interesting transfer window. There will be clubs who are not spending any money and are just going to sell. There will be clubs who are not spending any money and are just going to stay as there are. And there will be clubs that spend a little bit of money. And there will be clubs, very few clubs, that go out and spend a lot of money. And we need Manchester United to be that. This is because United want Harry Kane, especially if we can sell Pogba, says Darren Phillips. I see, Darren, I know where you've got that. You might have got it out of your own head, but I read that in an article today. I don't think it's anything to do with Harry Kane. I read an interpretation. Somebody was saying this is nothing to do with the Jadon Sancho deal. That will definitely happen. They're trying to get Spurs to lower the price for Harry Kane. It's got nothing to do with Harry Kane. We're just trying to get the Harry Kane story back in. Harry Kane's on a 4-year deal at Spurs. Spurs do not want to sell Harry Kane. This is not about getting Harry Kane down to being 75 million, because that's never coming down. This is Daniel Levy at Spurs. Harry Kane, Ed Woodward can tell any story he wants. He's not going to get Harry Kane's price down. Ed Woodward is 100% talking about the transfer market and how big deals are very unlikely. He is trying to drive the price down of any deal, not Harry Kane. And specifically, he's trying to buy... If he's driving any price down, it's Jadon Sancho's price he's trying to drive down, not Harry Kane's. We're not signing Harry Kane. So, you know, you can try and use that angle, and the press can try and use that angle. We're not signing Harry Kane. Just not going to happen. Never in a million years, because he's not a priority and he's way, way too expensive. And he's on a massive contract at Spurs. So it won't happen. Like and share the video, says Vandy Candy. Simon Stone said it from the BBC, says Nadeem. Well, I just, you know what? Not everybody's right all the time. I'm sure United would like to sign Harry Kane, but we're not signing Harry Kane. We're just not. It's not going to happen. Harry Kane's value is 150 to 200 million pounds. How much are you going to get it down by? Because if you get Harry Kane for 80 million, that means you're getting Sancho for 40 million. Just not going to happen. We're not going to do that. We can't do that. And look, as I've said before, there's not going to be a ruling by FIFA or the UEFA to say everybody's transfer fee is reduced. If Dortmund sit there and say, you know what? We're comfortable. We're not selling him for any less than 100 million. You can talk about the financial crash. You can talk about it's overinflated the price we want, but you pay it or you don't. See you later. It's mine to sell, and we're not selling him for anything less than that. And then do United walk away from the Sancho deal then? If Dortmund won't budge, do United walk away? Does Sancho force the move? I don't think he is the sort of person to do that. I think he would probably say, well, you know what, I'll just stay for another year. So very interesting, very interesting. What Woodward also spoke about was the return of football. And he also said that we're eager to see a safe return to Premier League football, Europa League football, FA Cup football. And obviously in the short term, it looks like it's going to be behind closed doors. So that's quite encouraging as well. And I think that look, you know, I know Gary Neville said, I'm not going to play, my team, Salford City, we're not playing any football. I've got people with underlying health conditions and I'm not going to put them into an unsafe situation. And I totally agree with Gary Neville on that. That's up to him to do that. But Salford City aren't Manchester United. They're not Arsenal. They're not Man City and they're not Liverpool. And with all due respect, there's a lot of people who support Salford City, but not to the volume of the Premier League. And we're talking about the survival of football clubs here. We're talking about the survival of football. They need to get that Premier League back if they can get it back in the next 2 months. And United will be at the forefront of that, and so will Liverpool. And I think everybody jokes about, oh, you know, Arsenal would like to void the season because then they might get in the Champions League and Liverpool won't win the league. But it's not that sort of win isn't really the win that Arsenal need. Arsenal need the win and the coffers in the bank account. And Arsenal need the Premier League to finish for that. And so do Norwich. And so do every other team that would benefit from avoiding a re-running of the season because they wouldn't get relegated. But the reality is money will come in if the Premier League completes the season. Money will be lost if they don't. And it will be a large amount of money. And what I would say, and I don't think anybody's said this yet, I know we were talking about it a few weeks ago, forget let's void the season because Liverpool won't win the league. Forget void the season because we might get in the Champions League through where we are in the league if City get a ban. If you want Jadon Sancho to come to Manchester United, you better hope the Premier League gets completed, because it won't happen if it gets voided, because everybody will lose hundreds of millions of pounds and we won't spend the money then. We won't. You know, you think about how much money United will get if this season gets completed. You're talking millions, probably hundreds of millions to United if we complete the season. Where do those £100 million go if we don't complete the season? Well, they don't go anywhere because they're not there. So, you know, if you want Sancho, you've got to want the season to be completed, to be honest. Sharon Banks says that we are screwed next season, and I'll answer that in a minute, said Jamie. He says, what would your reaction be if we sign no one? I don't think we're screwed next season. I think we've got a great opportunity next season. I do. I think we've got a great opportunity next season and to take advantage of the market. And I don't say that with any guilt at all, because we're talking about football here. And Manchester United have been ridiculously manipulated in recent years. I mean, I remember many years ago, Manchester United could bully teams in the Premier League because we had the money, we had the big club status, and not many people did. But with the likes of Chelsea and Man City, and then the Premier League, you know, distributing hundreds of millions of pounds to clubs, people like Everton and Leicester can basically say, yeah, you might want our player, but it's not like it was 20 years ago where you can force them to move for a reasonable price. We want over the odds. And Harry Maguire, £80 million, ridiculous. He ain't worth that. He's brilliant, but he's not worth £80 million. Wan-Bissaka's not worth £50 million. He is now, but we've overpaid for years. And then suddenly you get an opportunity whereby clubs are desperate for money and have to take reasonable prices. Oh, United, look at Bully Boy United. They're the ones taking them. Oh, look at how insensitive and immoral they are. They're trying to buy players on the cheap when they're benefiting from a worldwide, you know, pandemic where loads of people have died. Well, look, there's no correlation. There's no correlation, because the worldwide pandemic where everybody has died is horrific. But what happens because of that happens. Like, we can't do anything about it. We can't pretend that clubs are going to lose a lot of money and need to sell at reasonable prices to stay afloat. And suddenly the financial cycle changes, and bigger clubs will have bigger opportunities to buy players at a more reasonable price for once. And I think that's a lot of the message that Ed Woodward's sending out, that these 100, you know, I'll read it again. I can't help feeling that the speculation around transfers of individual players for hundreds of millions of pounds doesn't grasp the reality of the sport. And I think that could be the case. Jamie said, what would your reaction be if we signed no one? And Philip Burton would, Dortmund don't need the money. Would we get him on a lower fee, Mark? What do you think? And I agree with Philip there. I don't think Dortmund need the money. So I don't think Dortmund will just go, oh, we desperately need to sell Jadon Sancho. Remember, it's a buyer's market, but it's also a seller's market if you've got a very high valuable asset. And United might say, come on, Dortmund, give 50 million for Sancho in this market. And then Chelsea go, yeah, but we'll give you 90. And then, you know, it's a seller's market when they've got enough people who want to buy it. If United bought nobody this summer, how would you react? It's a difficult one. It's a really difficult one, because if the right message goes out from the club, we're not buying anybody because we've lost a load of money, what do? You can't. Can you really say Glazer's out? Can you really start protesting? Can you really start saying it's a disgrace? We'd have to know the facts. You'd have to know the facts of how much money United have lost, etc., etc. But I think it's United will have lost money, but I think it's an opportunity this summer. You've got to speculate to accumulate. Manchester United do have resilience more than most clubs. They also know that this is a pause button. It's a pause button for everybody. When you hit play again and people are allowed to go outside and go to matches again, those revenue streams won't disappear. The tap will come on, the money will pour in. So do you speculate to accumulate by taking advantage of this market where everybody's struggling? Maybe stretch yourself a little bit, knowing in the future you're going to get that money back. But in the short term, you get players in that you didn't think you could get at a more reasonable price. It's risk, but I think that's Manchester United. That's what we need to take more risks on the pitch, and I think we need to take more risks off the pitch if we want to close the big gap between Liverpool and City ahead of us. Glazers have put millions and millions of pounds out of the club. Time to put some money back into it, says Philip Arbikircher. And I wanted Sancho, Grealish this summer. Chelsea already got Ziyech, says Fanta Sprite. Yeah, but that was they sorted that deal before, didn't they, to be fair. Please do smash a like on the video. Bottom right-hand corner for that. No, smash a like on the video. Subscribe if you're new. But please smash a like on the video. Let's see if we can get over 500 likes while we're live. And There was a comment just coming in from there about PSG. Hopefully I can see it to give the person a shout out. United should buy Ozil. Please buy him, says Andy McDonald. No, we're not that desperate. Well, somebody in the live comments said that PSG have made an offer for Paul Pogba. We sort of talked about this last night. There's meant to be 4 clubs in for Paul Pogba now. Inter Milan, PSG, Juventus and Real Madrid. The PSG story is coming from Calcio Mercato in Italy, basically saying that PSG want Paul Pogba. I'm surprised PSG have never really been in for Paul Pogba because they've got the funds to do it. He could play with Neymar and Mbappe. But it's a pub league, isn't it? It really is. I mean, Jesus, you know, apart from the Champions League, you're on holiday there, aren't you? But they've probably got the funds to do it. But where this story totally falls apart is that they're offering up Draxler and Di Maria, which whoever that journalist is, mate, at least do a little bit of research. Like putting Di Maria in as part of the deal for Pogba in a story that you've clearly made up. It's just ridiculous. You know, talk about boycott and protests. Manchester United fans would go ridiculously mad if we ever bought Di Maria back. So that story to me has got no credibility at all. You can't just pick bits out of it. You can't go, well, maybe PSG are after Pogba and just ignore the Di Maria bit. I mean, we are not taking Di Maria back. So that story about PSG to me, until it comes from anywhere better, just comes across as a right load of nonsense, to be honest with you. There was a story I read this morning about Alexis Sanchez and Manchester United struggled to sell him. Well, you know, hello, what a surprise. That's just the reality we've been talking about for a number of weeks on here in the live comments. How do you sell? How do you sell Alexis Sanchez when there isn't a lockdown financial crash? You know, let's pretend this never happened, and I wish it never did happen. Let's pretend that football's still going. It's the end of April. We're still playing football. The season's going to end in a month. What are we going to do with Alexis Sanchez? We weren't selling him anyway. No one was going to pay him 400 grand a week. No one was going to pay us real money. Monopoly money maybe, but not real money. And so how harder is it now? I'd say it's 10 times harder to sell him now. He's on stupid money. He's crap. And no one's going to want to buy him. And yeah, I mean, it's not even a story. How do you sell Alexis Sanchez? Nobody wants him. We don't want him. So, you know, Arsenal fans can talk about Ozil. I think Ozil does offer something in a first-team element for Arsenal. Alexis Sanchez offers us nothing other than moody disruption when he's back at Carrington. So it's a massive problem. It's not Solskjaer's problem. Well, it is, but it's not Solskjaer's fault, but it is Solskjaer's problem. How do you solve this? And will Solskjaer, in his inexperienced naivety, think I can turn him into a good player? Because that's dangerous. To bring a player who turned his back on the club a year ago when Ollie wanted to give him a chance, who comes back because he's been shit and no one wants him, walks into the dressing room, everybody knows that he turned his back on the club a year ago to get his loan move, and everybody knows he's paid better than everyone else, and most important of all, everybody knows he's crap. Do you think that really builds a morale of positivity in the United dressing room? Because it doesn't. Because the Manchester United dressing room is exactly the same as your pub team dressing room. It's exactly the same as your lunch break at work where people sit together and talk. People are people. And people will have issues and people will say things and disruption will be caused. So Alexis Sanchez is a massive problem, but it's a problem that's probably down there on the pecking order of a lot of problems that footballers and clubs are facing at the moment. But I don't see how you solve the Alexis Sanchez problem, and other than loaning him out and taking the hit on his wages, because I think the further he is away from the club, the better. And the reality is that there are still people out there who say, give him a chance, maybe he can turn it around. You're totally ignoring the fact that he was given that chance a year ago. Ollie said it publicly. He's going to be part of our plans. 2 weeks later, he's gone. Why did he go? Because he walked into the office and said, I don't want to be here, I want to loan, and forced the manager's hand, because the manager can say publicly that this player's got a future at the club, but when that player comes in and says, I don't want a future at the club, Ollie does the right thing. He says, get him out, get him loaned out then. You know, I've tried, he doesn't want to be here, he doesn't want to be at the club. So Ollie did right a year ago, but that is known. He didn't want to be part of this season, and he got his move to Inter Milan. And he's got his move to Inter Milan, and yeah, he's had an injury, but he's not been that good. So he's now going to come back and go, oh, actually, I do want a chance. Do one. Like, just, you're a negative impact on this football club. You're a big mistake by Woodward and Mourinho. And to be honest with you, you're not 25. You're in your 30s. You've lost 2 yards of pace. You're not the player you were. You're not even the player we thought you were. Just, I don't know, just loan him out again, I think. You got to terminate his contract, says Aaron. Yeah, but to terminate his contract, you're talking 20, 30 million pounds. You just can't do that. You can't. You can't just walk away from that. His contract, Michael Wander, I think he's got 2.5 years left on his contract, maybe more. It was a big contract. A Chinese club could buy Sanchez, says Jailbird235. I mean, are they that stupid? I don't know. Are they that stupid? Have they got those funds to do it? I don't know. Aaron says, would PSG be interested? I don't know. That's the answer, Mark. Sanchez needs to be loaned out again, and United will have to pay a huge portion of his wages, says Darren. And I agree. I think that's the way forward for Manchester United with this. So, do I think that United are going to sign Sancho? What do I think about Woodward ruling out big deals? I think when you break it down, Ed Woodward has ruled out big deals, and he's done that because he's not stupid. Like, where are these big deals going to happen? I think we all hope they're going to happen, but the reality is I don't see big deals happening. Does it mean that Sancho's not going to happen? The hardest thing about the Sancho deal is if Dortmund say we want a big deal. We want a big fee. If they're not going to move on that, then United might have to... I could see a situation where United go, look, we want to do that deal, but the fee they're asking is ridiculous, so we can't do it. And why is that any different to Barcelona wanting to sign Neymar, but PSG saying we want 200 million, and Barcelona are like, look, we desperately want Neymar back, or Real Madrid want Neymar, but we can't pay 200 million. Your thirst or your hunger to buy a player can be ravenous, but it doesn't mean you get them if the fee is unachievable. So that's my concern with the Sancho deal, is the fee now unachievable? £100 million for Sancho 3 months ago was very achievable. Is it still achievable for United with all this money crash? I do think United will do business. I don't agree at this point that people need to start talking about boycotting or Glazers out, or if we don't sign anyone, it's a disgrace. We're in unprecedented times. Of course, the Glazers have a bad history in relation to spending money at this club. And of course, it would be wrong for United fans not to be suspicious that they'll use this as an opportunity not to spend money. But we must also remember that this might actually, for the first time ever, be a legitimate reason not to spend money because of the financial crash. But my feeling is that what Ed Woodward is saying is we won't be held to ransom. We haven't got loads of money to spend. We have got money to spend, and we'll spend it reasonably within the market that is now crashed. I think that's going to happen. And I think United do need to do that, as I said before, because this is our time. This is our opportunity. This is a time where Leicester City can't say, we want £80 million for Harry Maguire. This is a time where certain clubs who've got players that they thought they were going to get 50 million for are in big financial need and maybe have to take 20 million. United would do well to take advantage. If United have got £100 million to spend and they can't get Sancho, they do well to go round and pick off players from clubs that are struggling that are half the price they would have been 3 months ago. And that sounds horrible, but I think people need to forget about why it's happened because of this pandemic and remember that in a footballing sense, over the last 20 years, United have been ripped off time and time and time again. And this could be an opportunity to go and get good value players at a reasonable price. And of course, nobody likes why it's happened, but it doesn't mean that United shouldn't go and get players that will improve us quicker than we thought we were going to improve because the market is a lot more reasonable. We'll see. I think at the moment, for me, let's see what happens. Some will panic and say, that's it, we're not spending any money. And some will say, we're trying to manipulate the price. For me, I'd probably lean towards that. but it doesn't mean that we are going to spend money. We'll have to see. United are a US corporation with fans equivalent of employees generating revenue. Player purchases like employee bonus won't happen in the current climate, says Isa Planets. Very interesting interpretation. Remember tonight, we are live at 8 o'clock with the United Stand quiz. A bit of light relief. It's all football related tonight. And me and Rance are putting our Champions belt on the line again against DT, and I think Claude's doing it again. So remember, get your pen and paper ready from 8 o'clock. It's interactive. You can play it as well as we play it. Looking forward to that at 8 o'clock. The United Stand quiz, a weekly event now. Make sure you subscribe, get your notifications on. I'll speak to you later. Get in the comments, what do you think about this Woodward statement? Is it good, bad, or maybe? And I'll speak to you soon.